Over the past few weeks, we've had a lot of drama about tariffs. Tariffs on Mexico, tariffs on Canada, tariffs on China, then also tariffs on steel and aluminum, 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. And then today, Trump signed an executive order for reciprocal tariffs on trade partners around the world. Now, are these good, bad? How are they going to affect the United States? I'll let you know what I think. Trump just signed an executive order which is for reciprocal tariffs. Now, what this does is place tariffs on U.S. trade partners who tariff our exports to those countries. So, for example, Prime Minister Modi was in Washington, D.C., and he's the Prime Minister of India. India has very high tariffs on American goods that are coming into India. So the idea is to place equal tariffs on those Indian goods that are exported to the United States. Now, these reciprocal tariffs aren't supposed to take effect until until after April 1st, I believe. And this is to give the countries that are going to be saddled with these tariffs on their exports to us time to negotiate with the United States to reduce their tariffs or eliminate their tariffs, and then the United States will do the same in kind. So the goal of the Trump administration is to meet the tariffs of other countries with reciprocity, have equal tariffs on their goods that they have on our goods, and to level the playing field in that way. Next up is Mexico and Canada. So Trump announced 25% tariffs on both Mexico and Canada last week. I think this is basically a negotiating tactic to get Mexico and Canada to come to the table to deal with a lot of the border issues that they have with the United States, what with smuggling people and drugs and so on and so forth. However, Mexico and Canada also serve a purpose for China, which is to act as a backdoor to the United States to avoid the tariffs directly into the United States by shunting them through Canada and Mexico. So I think the United States is going to want some cooperation on preventing China from doing that sort of thing as well. Then, of course, there's the 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imported into the United States. And the real reason for these tariffs is to rebuild the top of the supply chain for so many industries in the United States. And in order to do that, you have to have aluminum and steel for so many manufactured goods. Now, the very top of the supply chain would be mining these things. But really where it starts to have a big economic impact is the production of steel, the production of aluminum. And this goes towards, this idea of taxing these things goes towards rebuilding the supply chains and industries inside the United States. And that's because they've been hollowed out over the past 50 years of deindustrialization and moving industries overseas. So in order to be competitive, you have to get the entire supply chains for these industries back into the United States. Then, of course, there's the 10% across the board tariff on China. Now, with this 10% tariff on China, there may be a lot of exclusions for things that we are not currently producing at all in the United States, or maybe there won't be, I don't know. It's a good question, actually. But there may also be a lot of increases that go much higher than 10% on China. And the purpose of this tax on China generally is to rebuild American industry. China built all its industries and its very tight supply chains by doing a lot of strategic things industrially. They've had all kinds of barriers to trade. A lot of those have been non-tariff barriers. They essentially built their internet economy by essentially banning U.S. internet companies from being in China. They made it so difficult to operate that you basically couldn't operate at all. So China's done this with a lot of other industries as well. They do the technology transfer, and then they'll eventually boot the foreign companies out of the country, sometimes with tariffs, other times with lots of other policies that just make it almost impossible to operate for the companies, the foreign companies that are trying to operate in China. And one of the things that China has done is it has built very tight supply chains, densely packed supply chains. So a lot of the cities in China, almost the entire industry might be located in one metro region, and that is from the top of the supply chain all the way down to the bottom. So because it's so tightly integrated and it's geographically so close together, you have all these synergies taking place. Just the geographic proximity puts everything much closer together for shipping and interacting with the companies and so on and so forth. So China's built these huge agglomerations of supply chains with multiple industries all integrated together within close proximity. And so any one factor is not going to matter. The cost of employees will not matter. The cost of a certain material won't matter. The cost of widgets and so on and so forth won't matter, because there is such a center of gravity in these centralized areas of supply chains. They have all the advantages. The only way you can get around this is to tackle the problem the same way China tackled it initially with its industrial policies 20 and 30 years ago. And that's exactly what China did, is it had nationalist industrial policies of taxes and regulations and technology transfer to dominate these industries. And China did not initially have any comparative advantage in these areas. Comparative advantage kind of being a 19th century concept is really out the window in a lot of ways. Even though I like the idea of free trade and so on, it's not really. It's absolutely quaint. You have these countries that are engineering these industrial policies, and the point of the policies are to build the industry and to drive the industries out of competitive countries. So we have this operating environment around the globe. China especially has done this in industry after industry. So it does require a policy from the government itself to get these industries back. Now, once you rebuild these supply chains, yes, you can be very competitive, and with modern manufacturing and modern technology, and it's advancing by the day with AI and everything else. It's not the factories that we used to have 50 years ago, so you won't have as many people in each factory, but there will be lots of jobs, because these supply chains, all the products we have today, are much more complex than they were 50 years ago. So there are many more steps, there are many more factories, and so even though each factory doesn't employ nearly as many people, far fewer people, higher paid jobs, there are so many more pieces, and the complexity and the overall expanse of these supply chains is much greater than it was before. So in reshoring these industries, there will be plenty of jobs that come with it. And finally, I just wanted to hit on taxes. Tariffs displacing taxes. So in 2024, the United States imported $4.1 trillion worth of goods and exported $3.1 trillion worth of goods. And we had a deficit, trade deficit of about $918 billion in 2024. So one of the things these tariffs will do is they provide revenue to the government. And the Trump administration has already made promises of tax cuts on things like tips and hopefully other income tax as well. And one of the things that tariffs can do is displace a lot of the income tax that we have internally in the United States. Now, the reason this is good is because income tax is a tax on production, whereas a lot of the imports that we have coming in are finished goods. They're consumption taxes. So what we're trying to do is increase our productivity in the United States. We want more productivity, higher productivity, more efficient productivity. And so not taxing labor or reducing the taxes on labor goes towards incentivizing that productivity in the United States. Now, there are a lot of intermediate goods that are imported as well, so it's not that cut and dried, but there are a lot of finished goods that are simply consumption. So in order to increase your country's productivity and increase the standard of living generally overall, it's better to tax consumption than it is production, because we want to grow our production. So that is one of the things, that's one of the beneficial things of offsetting the income taxes with tariffs. That's one of the things that it does. So those are my thoughts on the current situation with tariffs. If you agree, let me know. If you disagree, I'd like to see your disagreement. So go ahead and comment below. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.